Hi, we're sisters Elaine and Brenda.
Welcome to the Body Wealth Podcast, a space for conversation about the wealth that really matters.
Your best health. Welcome, Chareen. We're so glad to have you on the Body Wealth Podcast with us today. Would you take a second to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I am Chareen Monk. I am a resident of Clayton, North Carolina. I have been married for 32 years to my husband, Stanley. And together we have 4 beautiful children, young adults, let me rephrase that. And I am a speech pathologist as well as an augmentative communication specialist in a school system here in Johnston County. And I am very happy to be here with you sisters today.
Well, great. We are so glad that you are.
Well, thank you again for being on the podcast. We want to jump right in. We know that a little over a year ago, you had a day that really changed your life. Why don't you tell us how that day started, what was going on?
Yeah. So actually, this is my 1-year anniversary of a cardiac event that I suffered. A very hot day, much like today in North Carolina. I went for a walk with one of my friends and neighbor and just felt something that I really hadn't ever felt before. And before I tell you really what happened, I feel like I need to say that I'm a relatively healthy person. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. I call myself a seasonal social drinker, so I might have a drink at, a tailgate or something like that, but I'm not a drinker, especially anymore. And I'm relatively healthy. I mean, I could stand to lose some weight and get my BMI down. So when I started having symptoms, I kept trying to talk myself out of it. And I think that's something that we do as women. But I went on a hike or a walk with my friend. I was very well hydrated. I had my water with me. And while we were walking, we got to the top of an incline. It was a pretty steep hill. I got to the top and I just wasn't feeling well. And so I just asked my friend, I said, hey, can we just stop for a moment? And she said, oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so I just stopped and I just had a difficult time catching my breath. And now, while my neighbor and I, we've been together for years. I mean, we used to be those people that were at the gym at 5 a.m. So she knows me and I know her. But she had been exercising a lot, and I pretty much rolled off the couch and went on the hike with her. I was not in any shape to go exercise with her, bless her heart. And so we got there, and I just had a difficult time breathing, and I felt a little discomfort. It wasn't pain at all, but just a little bit of discomfort. It felt very much like indigestion or heartburn. Okay. So I said, let's just stop for a moment. And she said, hey, we can go back. And I said, that might be a good idea. So we turned around to come back, and I felt like my shoes were made of cement. I couldn't move my feet. I thought, what in the world is going on? So I kind of shuffled to the side and I decided to take my pulse. I take my pulse whenever I do exercise. I just try to stay in that optimal range for my age and my weight and everything. And it was high. It was really high. I don't remember the exact number, but it was well into the 170s.
How were you able to take your pulse on the hike?
So I believe in wearable technology.
So it's a smartwatch, your smartwatch that you took your pulse on.
Yeah, it's a smartwatch. So I took my pulse and it was high, and I said, ooh, yeah. So, and normally what I do, if it's higher than I want it to be, I just kind of take some deep breaths, I wait a few minutes, and then I recheck. And so that's what I did, and it actually went up into the 180s, which I've never seen those numbers before. I've never seen those numbers in my life. Still, I'm thinking, hey, I'm healthy. I'm out of shape. So at this point, I really did. I had more discomfort in my chest, and I felt clumsy. So I could walk at that point, but I just felt like my steps were just a little bit more clumsy than what I'm used to. So I got in my car. I don't remember driving home, and I know that sounds horrible, but not only did I drive home, but I drove my neighbor home, dropped her off, and came home and I hopped in the shower. I don't know why I did that. Like I said, I was really confused. And my husband came upstairs to check on me, and he knew something was not right. He said, "You don't look right." And I said, "I don't feel well." We still didn't call 911. He drove me to the ER. As soon as I got there, they did the echocardiogram and said, "Well, everything looks fine there, but it's just kind of a protocol that we go ahead and draw some labs too." So they drew the labs and they came back in, and the doctor told me, she said, "Sweetie, you have had some sort of cardiac event." She was wonderful. This is a hospital that I used to work at as well. So I felt like I kind of knew everybody. What they were going to do is keep me, because what they monitored, and I guess how they could tell that I was actually having an event, was because they were checking what they refer to as troponin levels, which measure the activity of your heart if you're having any sort of cardiac events. And so what they do is they check it a couple of times over like the next 6 hours. So like every 2 hours, they were drawing more blood. And she said, what we want to see is those numbers going down. And that was probably the longest 2 hours of my life, because they really don't do anything. And then they came back in and after the first draw and said, "Yeah, you're definitely having a heart attack. Your numbers have like tripled."
So the echocardiogram was normal. So a heart attack cannot be
EKG. I'm sorry. It was just the EKG.
And you can't see a heart attack on an EKG.
Mine did not show. I think for some people you can. I don't know if there has to be like a certain amount of damage in order to see that, or if it has to be active. I'm not sure, but I know that mine was fine. This is just protocol that we want to do some labs. And so they continued that every 2 hours, drawing more labs, and it kept increasing.
And so does that mean that you are actually having a heart attack at that moment and they don't do anything? They don't give you anything?
Scariest 6 hours of my life. Yeah. So at that point, of course, my husband's there, and my friend came, who's actually a physician, my best friend, and she came in and sat with me, and that was her response. She was like, "So we just sit here and we do nothing?" And they said, "Yeah. So what we've done is we have put in a call for transport to take her to a hospital that is set up to be able to address this." So that's what they did. And everybody was very laid back, and I just didn't feel like they were taking me seriously. We just kind of have to sit here and wait. So
that just seems counterintuitive to me. I'm having a heart attack. Shouldn't we intervene to minimize the damage? Even your friend who's a doctor thought that.
He thought that too. They did offer me nitroglycerin, and I will say that the moment that hit my tongue, the pressure was gone. I didn't even realize how intense the pressure was until it was gone.
You say they offered it to you, so could you have said no? I mean, that's so interesting to me. They're like, "Well, would you like some nitroglycerin?"
But I thought, but I guess there were some side effects to that. There were some potential contraindications of taking that, and I outweighed it. And I said, "Well, the pressure isn't that bad right now, so maybe not." And then my friend was like, "No, I think you should." And so I did, and I'm so glad that I did, because then I could really feel how much the discomfort had subsided. So
interesting. It feels like that's different. It feels like in the past, they would tell you what to do, or they would do what they felt they needed to do. And now, which is great, they give you a choice. I don't always feel like we have the information to make the right choice necessarily. And if you didn't have your doctor friend there, would you have felt that you had the information to make a choice like that?
No. And not only that, I'm not a cardiologist. I'm a speech therapist,
Right.
And then with the level of confusion that I had, I don't think I could have made that call. As I was saying before, I was healthy, and I was battling in my mind, like, no, this isn't cardiac related. This is probably indigestion. It's going to go away. Yeah. So with the confusion, I definitely wasn't in a place where I could have made that decision.
I'm glad you had your friend there.
Yeah. It's not like what you see in the movies, the Hollywood heart attacks where you clutch your chest and you fall out, and it wasn't any of that. It was like, oh, this kind of feels uncomfortable. And honestly, the confusion was really the worst part of it for me, I thought maybe I was having a mild stroke, never really heart attack.
And they do say women present differently. The symptoms for women are different for a heart attack.
That's exactly right. When I was asked to be on the podcast, I thought, wow, I'm going to make myself kind of vulnerable telling my story. And there are going to be people that listen to this and think, well, I didn't have that or I didn't have that, so this isn't a heart attack. But just for everybody to know, just listen to your bodies. If something doesn't feel right.
And it can be different for everybody.
I've met other people that have had heart attacks and they didn't have any of the symptoms that I did. So forget what you know. And if it doesn't feel right, seek medical attention.
Right.
Great advice for everybody. Do you think if you hadn't had your device and you weren't able to take your pulse, would you have done anything differently?
I'm happy that I had the whereabouts of me to take it. I'm not sure that I would have. The other thing I forgot to say is once I did get home, I started measuring my rhythm, my heart rhythm. That's another little app on here. And I did that. And like 3 times straight, I got error messages, which I've never gotten that before. And in hindsight, I think that was my watch's way of saying, we're not just going to jump the gun and say, hey, go get help. We're going to make sure that we're giving this woman the right information. And so on the 4th time when I checked it, it said seek medical attention. So that definitely helped me as well make the decision to tell my husband to, let's do this.
Let's go to the hospital.
Then once I got to the hospital and, waited that 6 to 8 hours, and I was transported to another hospital that had a cardiologist there that was prepared to do the echocardiogram. That was a little bit more of an invasive procedure to detect, how much damage had been done to my heart. It showed that my heart was amazing. My cardiologist at the follow-up appointment said, your heart is beautiful. He said, I don't think that, you're going to die one day, but I don't think it's going to be from a heart attack. So while that made me happy, it's a little discerning because I still don't know why it happened.
Let's back up for me. This is going to sound like a really ignorant question, but so your heart wasn't damaged. What is a heart attack?
I think it was just an infarction. What we did find from the echocardiogram was that my heart was just slightly enlarged. And I do have a history of high blood pressure. Also, I have somewhere between my father and my oldest sister getting sick and passing, I developed anxiety. And so my past medical history is very boring. It's very uncomplicated. My blood pressure was always well maintained. I don't always eat great, but I always monitor my blood pressure. I have my own cuff and I even have the app and I write it down. And so I'm very into monitoring my heart. So I think it might have been years before, whether it was the anxiety or the hypertension, but it definitely caused a little bit of enlargement of the left ventricle of my heart. It was very, very minimal. My father also died of a heart attack and had the very same issue. He had other complications as well, but we're piecing together the family history. We're trying to tie in the anxiety piece and how long I might have had hypertension before I ever became compliant with taking medications and seeking attention. Really just don't know.
So you think besides your anxiety, were there anything going on currently in your life when this happened that you think could have potentially contributed to that?
I think as a mother of 4 and I have a child with intellectual disabilities and I help with my mother who needs my support. I think it's just like a culmination of everything for women. I can't really pinpoint one thing.
Right.
There's a recent study at Yale talking about stress and heart attacks. And the broken heart is a real thing. It could just be the stress that we take on as women and just having to, find different ways to calm ourselves and to just make minimal changes in our lives to kind of combat some of the anxiety and some of the stress that we deal with as women. I just feel like as women, we take care of everybody else, but we don't always take care of ourselves.
What changes have you made then to try to not have that stress build up again?
Having the 4 kids, they are young adults, and I feel like they need you just as much when they're young adults as they do when they're toddlers. But it was time for me to kind of be a little selfish and make my husband step up and do more things around the house. To say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to go visit my mom right now. I'm going to put on an exercise routine and I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to meditate, or I just need, an hour just by myself. So I've definitely taken more time for myself, and I've been very serious about that over the past year. I have also made better decisions as far as eating, and I've had one drink since, and that was in December. I don't want anything that could compromise my health at this time. Making better choices, trying to eat more protein, eat fewer sweets. So just trying to take better care of me. And in the process, I've lost about 30 pounds, which is...
Wow, in a year? That's really a lot.
It's a lot for a year. And, but I've been very serious about it. My exercise regime has been pretty intense. I have a son who plays in the NFL. And I told him, when you start this training camp, I'm going to start exercising just like you do. Because if you can do it, I can do it. And he's
great.
So I didn't miss a workout, I don't think, for probably like 10 weeks.
Wow.
I really, even on Sundays and evenings. I know once our plane landed and it was like 11:30 and I had to get that workout in. So I came home and dropped everything and put on my virtual reality headset and I started boxing. There's fun things to do, and I've never been a big exerciser. I mean, I love to go for walks and things like that, or I have an elliptical. I'd like to get on that. But as far as like intense in the gym sweating, that's just not for me. But I found something that I like, and I'm learning to put myself first. And overall, it's all made an impact on me and my overall health. And my doctor is very pleased with the changes that I've made, and I feel better.
You feel better.
Oh, I feel so much better.
How do you feel different? How do you feel different than maybe like the day before you went on that walk?
I'm definitely calmer. I think it puts things in perspective. I will say, when I went for my first cardiology follow-up, I couldn't stop crying. And I told the doctor, I don't know what's wrong with me, but since I had the event, I can't stop crying. I'm sad all the time. I don't know what's going on. And he said, well, that's very normal for someone who has suffered a heart attack. And I said, well, that's good to know. I didn't know that. It was not something I was expecting. Cried all the time. I was pleading with God. I lost a sister to heart issues.
Wow, I'm sorry.
And that journey with her over the 6 months that she was really sick, it opened up a lot of wounds for me, and I thought they were healed, and they weren't. And I just kept envisioning myself looking like she did, and not being able to eat, and not being able to enjoy my children and watching them grow. And it was just so much emotionally. But the meditation and the prayer and the exercise, they have really helped a lot.
I can imagine. You have the fear for yourself, but you also have a fear for all the people who are depending on you. You feel like you need to be there for them. Do you think that also contributed to some of what you were feeling?
Yeah. When you have a child with intellectual disabilities, you feel like you have to be there for them. My husband and I, we didn't like to talk about what happens, if something happens to us. We never wanted to have that discussion, but I'm sitting here looking right now at the wills and the trusts and the things like that that we had to put into place. And that gives you a peace of mind, knowing that he's going to be fine. He's going to be taken care of. I took advantage of a lot of the classes about like estate planning and wills and trusts. And I included my children in on this so that we were able to put together a plan for what will happen when I die. And what will happen when your father dies. So it just gives you a peace of mind to have that in paper form, in a secure location where that should this ever happen again, my son will be taken care of. So
that's really smart. I mean, it's smart because of your son, but I think everyone can learn from that, which is we know that we are not immortal. So given that What's the plan, and do the children that we have know about the plan?
And so we can sort of look at your cardiac event as a blessing in that it did motivate you to do that.
I'm definitely a different person than I was a year ago, just in so many ways. In so many ways. Like I said, it definitely puts things in perspective. Even the sadness that I went through afterwards, I don't want to go back there.
And how were you able to get through that, though? How did you move past that part of it?
Getting up early before everybody else, going downstairs with my phone, opening my Bible, praying, having just some solitude. We have this beautiful just area that is just so peaceful behind our house, and just going there every single morning. I don't care if I'm late for work. I don't care if I'm late for church. I don't care. That's my time. And it's wonderful. So I have my cup of coffee, I have my protein shakes, whatever I need. And it's just me and God and just my solitude and maybe a dog or two.
Have you gone back on that hike since that day?
I went back like that week.
What? That same week?
I had to. I had.
Why?
I'm very competitive spirit, not in an athletic way, but I compete with myself. Like, anybody who knows me and knows me well will tell you I am very strong-willed. And that was just something that I needed to do for me. I had to wear a cardiac monitor for like maybe 6 or 8 weeks. So I did have my monitor on. So yeah, they were like, start taking walks, So actually it was probably less than a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
So after you saw your cardiologist, did they change your medication? Did you have any treatment, or you just were good?
Yeah, no, I'm on a lot of meds. I will say that. I'm on blood pressure medication. I'm on statins. I'm on the whole regimen of medication. And that was tough. That was really tough because I wasn't taking a whole lot of medication before that. And I don't do well with drugs. I just didn't like the way that they made me feel. And that took probably 3 months to just allow my body to get acclimated to the way that it was feeling. I was very lethargic. I will say this. What blew my mind is when I was going back and I was looking at my chart online, and my cholesterol, cholesterol is supposed to be under 200.
Right.
My cholesterol was like 180. My good cholesterol was good. My bad cholesterol was good. And then the fact that they had to put me on statins and cholesterol medication, it's just protocol. It's absolutely just protocol for anybody who's had a heart attack. And I battled it. I'd heard horrible things about statins. And my doctor said, do your research. You will see that it'll help you in the long run. So I finally agreed to taking the statins. Felt horrible, felt just as bad as I knew that I would feel, but I gave it some time and I feel so much better. And my cholesterol is probably really low now.
The side effects of the medicines went away after a couple of months, like your body adjusted to taking them?
Yeah, we did have to make some adjustments because I was, still checking my blood pressure regularly, and it was like borderline. So like I said, I'm very symptomatic and I'm not afraid to reach out to my doctor, and she'll tell you that. I might have been before, but I'm not now.
Good.
So I was just like, I feel terrible. I need to come in. And so we tweaked my medications. We changed some, there's several different ones out there. You just have to find out what's right for you. And I was able to do that. And now after, I would say probably 3 to 6 months, I just began feeling normal again.
I love this. It's such a great example for 2 reasons. One, like you, I hate taking medicines. I'm like, no, I'll just fix it with diet and exercise. But I read a book which was like, let's take blood pressure. If it's higher than it's supposed to be, the longer you wait to address that, the more damage you're doing. So for me, I had to convince myself to go ahead and take the medicine. But the other thing, which is important related to what you said about your cholesterol, is those numbers are just averages, often based on population studies that don't have anything to do with us. So even when your cholesterol numbers are good, quote unquote, maybe it's not good for you.
That's right.
So exactly it's great that you worked with your doctor to get a set of medicines that get you where you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that my heart was a little bit enlarged, I really did get to thinking, well, maybe my cholesterol was really high before, and that's the damage that happened that led to this. So if I get on the medication, I can prevent any further damage. And that's the way that I saw it. And that's the way I was able to make peace with it. So
Good.
So you found doctors, it sounds like, that were responsive to your desires and what you wanted to do and were willing to work with you. How did you find them?
Well, they're the same team that I had before, but I really feel like the missing piece was me and my inability to advocate for myself. I'm the type of person where my appendix was rupturing and I was like, I didn't want to bother anybody by going to the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
I had a baby in my front seat of my car because I was just like, they told me to leave. And I was like, okay, I'll go,
What's your lesson from that experience?
Wasn't to go to the hospital when I had chest pain. So I think just advocating for me is, I advocate for everybody else. And that's who I am. I am a disability rights advocate. I am an animal advocate. It's like everything that my kids are into, I support. I was everybody else's advocate but mine.
Another blessing from this event then is you're learning to do that and helping us all to learn to advocate for ourselves.
I mean, I've preached it forever. Focus on you. You can't care for anybody if you're not taking care of yourself. I preach that to everyone. That was my spiel. And I never really listened to that advice for myself. And now I am.
Yay. And hopefully others will be inspired by your role model. So thank you for that. But also, did anybody in your family change anything based on your model?
I think so. I think my husband really tries to do more. Even if it's carrying my things to the car in the morning, he'll make my coffee. And it's not like they're pampering me, but they know.
It's reciprocation. They know that you have taken care of them, and they just realize that they can do some things to help support you, and they're willing to do it. That's great.
And it feels good. It feels really good. With the oldest ones, if they're having conflict in their lives, sometimes I think they think a little bit, let me try to work this out before I immediately just call mom. So
fantastic.
That helps as well.
I just want to jump back to the virtual reality boxing. I want to hear a little bit more about that because that sounds really interesting to me.
It is amazing. And I'm not a gamer at all, but someone said, hey, you really should try this. And I'm like, okay. You just put these glasses on and it takes you to this different world, and you can go wherever you want. You can go to Egypt, you can go to the moon, you can go to Saudi Arabia, you can go wherever you want. There's meditation. There's something called flow, which is a lot like dancing, except nobody gets to see you dance. You're just with yourself. And then there's boxing. And I have friends that I compete with. So that's really nice. And I just kind of lose myself.
Well, finding a workout that you enjoy and want to spend time doing, that's a win right there. I'm still looking for that one.
All right, we're going to try boxing.
Also, I was thinking early on when you were talking about your walk, you were saying, sometimes you had symptoms and you ignored them. So before you actually had this event, were you feeling anything? Now looking back, you think might have been a clue that something like this could happen?
Elaine, you're the first person I've said this to, but the day before, my neighbor and I went walking, and I came home. I remember my son and my husband were in the living room, and I said, that was brutal. I said, my chest started hurting a little bit, not pain. I think I took a Prilosec and tried to, just dismiss it. But I don't know. There's no way for me to know because I didn't seek medical attention at that time.
As women, we do that. We're just like, I don't have time for something to be wrong. I just put a patch on it and keep moving. So it's a good lesson.
Is there anything else you've learned from this experience?
I think overall, I'm so grateful. I've gotten past the sadness and I'm just stuck with my joy now. And I don't care if my house is a mess. I mean, if you all could see the mess behind me right now, you'd be like, wow. So I'm just trying to be present. I love going to work. The little kids just light my soul. I'm just trying to find joy in everything that I do. And I'm helping with my mom. I think I mentioned that. And while that could be a burden to some people, I get such joy from it because I'm so blessed to have a mom that's 82 years old. There's so many people that say that. So just the time we spend together, it just brings me pure joy. And I'm just going to keep just counting my blessings and praying that, I know that things won't always be amazing in my life. And I'm here for it. I'm here for the good and the bad. And I'll praise Jesus regardless. I'm just trying to find joy right now and just be present.
I love it. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Is there anything in this experience that you think was affected by your being a Black woman?
That's a really good question. I think part of the reason why I struggled with advocating for myself was because I remember being pregnant with my daughter, and that was in 1996, so it's been a while. I remember having kidney stones. I was so sick with her when I think about it. I gained 8 pounds like from start to finish. I was so sick.
Oh my goodness.
But I remember going to the emergency room, urinating blood, and telling the doctor, I'm in severe pain. I don't know what it is. I'm in severe pain. And they looked at me and said, you don't look like you're in pain.
What?
I think I was judged. I feel like there is some disparity in healthcare for Black women. We're caregivers. We care for everybody else. But then when we need the support, I feel like I was dismissed. And like I said, I'm a tough cookie. I will go to bat for anybody, but I wasn't always doing that for myself. So looking back, I don't think that I advocated for myself as a Black woman.
Well, it's so good you had your husband and your friend who was a doctor. When you're in a vulnerable place, it is hard to advocate for yourself. So I think bringing someone with you is always a good way to prevent some of the bad things that can happen. What makes you feel well cared for by your medical providers?
I'm a speech therapist. I work in the school systems now, but I have worked in long-term care facilities, rehab facilities, hospital settings. I know what I provide, and it is the bedside, the piece that's really not taught. Just listening to people. You learn so much from people if you just take the time to listen. Sometimes I feel that healthcare is so compromised right now because of the low reimbursement rates that doctors are having to see triple the number of patients now in order to make ends meet. And I feel like it's compromised the people side of it, the bedside piece of it that people need. If you don't have the personality to sit down and talk to somebody, put somebody in place that can do that. Have your med tech or your nurse. I mean, somebody, that's fine. If you don't have that piece, then you need to really put it in place. You don't want to be treated like you're the 5th heart attack that's come in that day. You don't want to be treated like that. I feel like more information could have been provided to me from the first cardiologist that I saw regarding what happened. I think that could have helped ease my fears a little bit and could have spared me those couple of months of that sadness that I went through. If somebody could have told me, you know what, this is what you should expect in the next couple of months. You're going to be dealing with your mortality, the near fatality that you've almost had. You're going to deal with that. So expect yourself to be sad. Get a counselor, meditate, whatever it is that you need and want, do that. That would have been really helpful.
It's interesting because we've talked before about getting better training for doctors so that they can have that bedside manner that you discussed. But I like your point that maybe not everybody can do that. And if you can at least recognize that that's a weakness of yours and complement it with a person who can do that part, that's another way of solving the problem.
It definitely will improve the quality of care for everybody. You won't only feel better, but you'll get better care.
And better outcomes. It has been such a joy to talk to you, Chareen. Thank you for taking the time.
I think you do wonderful work, especially for Black women. I could find myself in every single story. every single story with, having children with autism or dealing with anxiety. It's just really a great podcast. And I hope that you continue to grow and touch people's lives.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. Want to hear our take on this conversation? Check out our After the Show episode right here. For resources related to today's topic, see the show notes.
If you want to support Body Wealth, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. We'd also love it if you give us a 5-star rating and write a review letting us know what you love about the show.
The Body Wealth podcast shares personal stories to inspire you. It does not constitute medical advice. For that, we encourage you to work with a trusted healthcare provider. We also want to remind you that the views expressed by our guests are their own.
This podcast is dedicated to our mother, Jean Fernandez Barbour, who showed us what advocating for yourself really looks like.